Welcome to the Wisdom That Breathes channel. Across all our platforms, we try to share wisdom which is relevant and accessible to everyone. But on this particular platform, we go deeper into some of the ancient principles found within the scriptures. If you find some of the terminology difficult or inaccessible, then go over to our Keshava Swami YouTube channel where you'll be able to find other content which is perhaps more relatable. Thank you and enjoy the wisdom that breathes.
Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Radha Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama, Hare Rama, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, everyone. So really happy to be here, and we have some time this afternoon to discuss something from the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is a beautiful book because it shifts our vision from the way in which we are accustomed to seeing the world, accustomed to seeing life. There is the world that we see, but there are so many invisible worlds that we don't see. Sometimes there's an invisible world that people are hallucinating that doesn't actually exist. One time, one of Srila Prabhupada's early disciples, who was perhaps influenced by some illegal substances, said, "When I offer the food, Swamiji, I can see some glowing around it." Prabhupada said, "Keep chanting, it will go away." So there's an invisible world that we imagine that's not actually really there. There's also an invisible world that is there, but that we don't actually currently have access to. Because the spiritual dimension is existing in the fourth dimension. In Sanskrit, we say this is Turiya, the fourth. You see, there are many threes in this world, but there's a fourth dimension which is beyond that. There's the three modes, but then there's Vishuddha Sattva, which is the fourth, beyond that. There are three dimensions in this world, but then there's the fourth dimension, which is beyond that. There are three miseries in this world, but then there is an existence which transcends that. So like this, there's a fourth dimension, an invisible dimension. And that dimension can only be seen by an adjustment of consciousness. And that begins with an adjustment of perception and intellect. And that's why the Bhagavad Gita is so powerful, because it gives you the knowledge, which then gives you the opportunity to shift your consciousness, which then gives you the opportunity to access other dimensions of reality. So the Gita challenges our way of thinking. Like, for example, if I asked you, what occurs once in an hour, once in a minute, but never in a second? Isn't it one of those? The letter U. It's an obvious answer, but the problem is we make an assumption that I'm talking about an event. Or for example, if I say to you, a cat jumped out of a 30-story building but remained alive, how is it possible? How is it possible? Well, jumped off the first floor, exactly. It was a we made an assumption, 30-story building. That means it must have jumped off the 30. I didn't say that. Or for example, if I say someone was learning to drive and they were going down the street the wrong way, but they were still not breaking the law. Why? And don't say they were driving in India. Because they weren't driving, they were walking. So can you begin? Don't worry, I won't go on all evening like this, but you can begin to see what I'm saying here. What happens in the world is that we make so many assumptions about ourselves, assumptions about other people, assumptions about how the world is working. And because of these assumptions, what happens is we begin to miss obvious realities that can actually give us an insight into much deeper truths. And so the Bhagavad Gita is so powerful because what it does is it shifts our way of thinking. And it helps us to see life in a different way. Because sometimes our thinking is more complicated than it needs to be. Prabhupada said this philosophy is so simple, you may just miss it. Like when I was coming here and I saw the sea, then I was remembering a story. There was a story of a businessman who went to the Caribbean islands. Anyway, he wanted to cross a river, so there was a boatman there who was kind of on his hammock, like, chilling out, taking it easy. So the businessman kind of woke him up. He said, I need to get to the other side. He said, yeah, okay, let's go. He was very relaxed. Anyway, so they got into the boat, and then the businessman looked at the boatman and he goes, what do you do all day? He goes, I just chill out. I'm under the, palm tree. I'm in the sun. And, whenever someone comes, if someone comes, then I take them across in the boat. The boatman said, why don't you work harder? And the boatman said, why? He said, because then if you work harder, you can have 2 boats. So then the businessman, he said, you can have 2 boats. And then the boatman said, but why do I want 2 boats? He said, because then you can employ someone else and make double the money. And then the boatman said, but why do I want to make double the money? He said, because then you can get 4 boats and you can form a company. And the boatman said, well, why do I want a company? He said, because then you can employ more people and eventually you can go into other parts, other regions and expand and become a multinational. And the boatman said, why would I want to do that? He said, because then you can earn lots of money and you can retire. And then the boatman said, and why would I want to do that? He said, because then you can come to a nice island like this and relax for the rest of your life. At that point, the boatman didn't need to say anything to the businessman. I think the penny dropped. Now this, I want you to think about this story deeply. Because maybe something of our own lives is reflected in this story. We tend to go around and around and around in very, very complicated, create very, very complicated lives for ourselves. And after going all around, all this different complexity, we might at some point think, why did I do all of that? Like, I could have just done it in a much simpler way. And so the Bhagavad Gita is very beautiful because every time we open it, it begins to challenge and kind of shift parallel thinking, a different way of approaching reality. So we'll read a verse today from the Gita and kind of see where we go with this. Okay. So this is, I'm reading a verse today from the 7th chapter of the Gita, which is entitled Knowledge of the Absolute. We're reading from the 2nd verse, and I guess none of you can see it, but see if you can repeat it after me just by hearing, because that's how they actually used to remember Sanskrit. So listen carefully, line by line, see if you can repeat. Jnanam teham savijnanam idam vakshyam yasheshata yajgnatva nehabhuyonyaj gnatavyam avashishyate jnanam teham savijnanam idam vakshyam yasheshata yajgnatva nehabhuyonyaj gnatavyam avashishyate. Very good. It's actually very powerful to learn not by looking at all, but just by listening. Once we went to a Rath Yatra, anyway, on the way back we got stuck in traffic. And so we decided to learn a verse, but there was only one Bhagavad Gita. It was the time before smartphones, so it was only one Bhagavad Gita in the car. And so the person at the back began reciting this one verse. It was actually the 6 demoniac qualities. For some reason, we've decided to learn that verse. I don't know why. But and it was profound because we did it for about half an hour, all of us, just from hearing. And literally, it must have been like 10 years later, somehow in some context, that verse came up. And I just managed to just recall it, just like that. And I'm not anyone special by any stretch of the imagination. But it just shows the power of hearing. So there are capacities that we have which have been instilled within us, but have been lost over time. So don't underestimate the power of hearing. Okay, so this is the translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Krishna says to Arjuna, I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. This is a bold statement. Krishna is saying that now I'm going to tell you everything, both phenomenal and numinous. Phenomenal means the knowledge of this world, the knowledge of our immediate environment, and numinous means what's beyond this time-space reality. What is that beyond? Krishna says, I'm going to reveal it all to you. And once you know this, yaj gnatva, having understood, neha bhuyo naj gnatavyam avashishyate, there's nothing more. This is it. There's nothing further. Nothing further to know. Purport. Complete knowledge includes both knowledge of the phenomenal world, the spirit behind it, and the source of both of them. This is transcendental knowledge. The Lord wants to explain the above-mentioned system of knowledge because Arjuna is Krishna's confidential devotee and friend. In the beginning of the 4th chapter, this explanation was given by the Lord, and it is again confirmed here. Complete knowledge can be achieved only by the devotee of the Lord in disciplic succession directly from the Lord. Therefore, one should be intelligent enough to know the source of all knowledge, who is the cause of all causes and the only object for meditation in all types of yoga practice. When the cause of all causes becomes known, then everything knowable becomes known, and nothing remains unknown. The Vedas, Mundaka Upanishad 1.1.3 say, Kasmin ubhagavo vigyate sarvamidam vigyatam bhavati. Just the translation of that verse is that one who knows Krishna, one who knows the Supreme Absolute Truth, they automatically know everything. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So this is a very, very bold claim. Krishna is saying that when you read the Bhagavad Gita, you don't just get knowledge of what's beyond this world, but you will also understand everything in your immediate reality as well. This is a very, very profound point because most people think religion is a retirement plan. Religion's what you do when you're close to death. Religion's what you do when everything else has been exhausted and is coming to the final moment. However, here Krishna is saying that by grasping the Bhagavad Gita, you can understand not just numinous knowledge, but phenomenal knowledge. You can understand how the world works, what are the laws behind it. If you know the laws, then generally you can get to the top of something. Actually, if you look at most US presidents, just a bit of fun facts for you, most of them were lawyers, actually, or had some legal background. There's a sense that when one knows the legal background, when one knows law, when one knows the rules by which things play out, then they have the inside information to be able to advance. And it works the same in the material sphere. So, the Bhagavad Gita is powerful because it tells you the blueprint of the whole material universe. And that is powerful knowledge. There's an interesting movement in the world. So, for example, if I say you're an atheist, then that means you believe in how many gods? No gods, right? So if I say you're a monotheist, then how many gods? One God. If I say you're a polytheist, then how many gods? Many gods. If I say you are a autotheist, then what does that mean? That means you think, I am God. Once someone was coming down the street and he had a t-shirt, and on the front of the t-shirt it said, I used to believe there was no God. And I was like, wow, good, a change of heart. And then he walked past me, and on the back it said, and then I realized I am God. Oh no. So atheist, polytheist, monotheist, autotheist, pantheist, what does that mean? You believe Laguna Beach is God. Nature is God. Agnostic, on the fence. But do you know there's something in the world which has become more prominent than any of these, and which underlies actually all of these in one sense? It's not atheism, it's not polytheism, it's not monotheism, it's not autotheism. It's called apatheism. This actually, social scientists tell us now, is what's prevailing in the world. Apatheism means people who just don't really care about the whole thing. When it comes to religion, God, the world, questions of existence, ontology, meaning, purpose, what happens after death, why I'm here, they're kind of just like, I don't care. It's not relevant for my life. It doesn't help me. This religion is something which is just, it's just something that I'm not interested in. I'm not even bothered to make a decision on whether it's true or not, because to me it just feels like it's so irrelevant. So it's funny, people think that. Now here, what Krishna is saying is that it has to be relevant, because the Bhagavad Gita gives you knowledge of the phenomenal world. It gives you knowledge of this life and how to achieve and succeed in this world. And therefore, the Bhagavad Gita is a book of yoga. Now people think if it's a book of yoga, and the ultimate purpose of yoga is to connect with what's beyond this world, which is true, then that's why they're thinking that the Bhagavad Gita is a very otherworldly book. But yoga is actually meant to help us not just in the afterlife, but yoga is meant to help us right here, right now. In the world today, yoga has kind of lost its soul, if you can say that. We tell people yoga is less about looking good on the outside, and it's more about beautifying your inside. Yoga is less about touching your head to your toes, but more about connecting the soul to God. Yoga is less about overcoming your material diseases, but it's more about overcoming your material desires. So like this, people have actually a very mundane conception of yoga. But yoga is meant to connect you with divinity, but not just connect you with divinity, connect you with your ultimate purpose in this life and beyond. And therefore, the Bhagavad Gita has 3 yogas. Karma yoga, the first 6 chapters, bhakti yoga, middle 6 chapters, Jnana Yoga, final 6 chapters. If you look at the 3 biggest aspirations that people have in their life, then basically it's success, love, and freedom. Everyone is looking for success, everyone is looking for love, and everyone is looking for freedom. These are the universal pursuits that every single living entity in this world is seeking. They're so innate that nobody has to be taught, or nobody has to be convinced, or nobody has to be kind of forced to put energy into finding these. Everyone just intuitively searches for success, love, and freedom. The interesting thing is, karma yoga is the yoga of success. Bhakti yoga is the yoga of love. And Jnana yoga is the yoga of freedom. And therefore, if an apatheist comes and says, I'm apathetic about all of this because it's just not relevant to my life, clearly they haven't understood that this is the most relevant. The first thing that Krishna teaches in the Bhagavad Gita is the yoga of success. How to actually be successful in this world. And Krishna basically says the yoga of success is 2 things. Number 1, to know what you're meant to be doing, to know what we say in Sanskrit is your dharma, and then to utilize that dharma in service, in contribution, in the benefit of people other than yourself. If you do those 2 things, you actually perfect the yoga of success, or karma yoga. The first thing is to know what your dharma is. So this is another big question in the world. What is my purpose? So Krishna teaches us basically the answer to certain questions will tell you what your purpose is. Look at yourself and ask yourself the question, what am I better at than any other thing that I do in this world? Number 2, what am I generally better at than the people around me? Number 3, what do I do even when I'm not asked? Number 4, what do I do even if I wasn't paid for it? What do I do, number 5, that just comes without any effort or without any exertion? The answer to these questions may help us to ascertain what our dharma is. And this is the first step in the yoga of success, knowing our purpose. And then Krishna says it doesn't end there, because then what do you do with that purpose? Purpose is never selfish. Purpose always has to be used in service to others. And therefore, the yoga of success teaches us that when we gain things through our aptitude, then we have to utilize that in service. And then we're successful. We're not just successful externally and materially, which will definitely come, but we're also successful in finding a satisfaction within, because we use that ability in service. So we must always have that generous, giving, selfless mood. We shouldn't, in Sanskrit they call it a kripana, and a kripana means a miser. A miser is someone who has so much success, but then doesn't use it for others. In the Niti Shastra, there's a famous verse about misers, and it said that there's never been a charitable person like a miser. What do you mean by that? There's never in this world been a charitable person like a miser, because they earn and earn and earn, and they rack up their bank account, and they're so miserly they don't spend one penny of it. They don't touch any of their money, and then they die, and all of that money goes to someone else. So the miserly person, is the most charitable person in the world, because they donate everything without even touching it. They're so detached that they don't even touch the money. So there's a sense in which this kind of miserly mentality enters within us. And that's kind of antithetical to the yoga of success. So this is the first thing, Krishna, isn't it so practical? The yoga of success. Find your dharma and then engage your dharma in the appropriate way. And then the yoga of love is beautiful. The middle 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita are teaching us about how to connect in a relationship of love with divinity. The amazing thing is that all the principles that Krishna gives for connecting with divinity in a relationship of love can also be utilized to connect in any relationship of love in this world. Because the principles of loving connection are universal. So for example, Krishna will say that love is not, he doesn't say it in these terms, I'm just using these terms. He said, love is not chemistry, but love is commitment. There's this notion that I'm waiting to fall in love. But you don't fall in love. It's a commitment. It's a conscious effort. It's a consistency of the giving of someone's heart to someone else that actually awakens love. And it's the same with divinity. It's the same with a spouse. It's the same with a parent. It's the same with a friend. The techniques of love are universal. In the middle 6 chapters, Krishna will tell us love is not binary, but love unfolds like a flower. Again, this concept, I'm going to fall in love. One day I'm not in love, and then the next day I am. But actually what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita is that love is there, but it's just awakening. It's just opening like a flower, blossoming according to one's endeavor. So like this, there are many, many ways in which Krishna actually teaches us about how to awaken love. He says love is not just about interaction, but it's about attention. Sometimes we have this notion that I'll fall in love with the person I spend the most time with. But it's not so much about how much time you spend with someone, but it's the intention, it's the heart, it's the amount of presence that you have while you're with them. So aren't these principles so beautiful because they help us to understand how to love God, and at the same time they help us how to understand how to actually love everyone and everything in connection with Him. And this is the yoga of love. And then in the final section, Krishna talks all about jnana yoga, which is the yoga of wisdom. But what we can say in modern terms, what that's basically teaching is the yoga of freedom. Once there was a spiritual teacher, he was giving a class, and someone put their hand up and said, "What's the nature of illusion?" And so the guru, he got up off the seat and he ran out and he ran into the courtyard and he started hugging a tree and he started shouting, "Let me go, let me go, let me go." And he looked at the student and he said, "This is your answer. This is illusion. That we want to be free, but we're the ones who are actually holding on. There are so many things. It's very interesting in this world. People think that their happiness depends on gaining many things. So our focus is always on gaining. But the other whole aspect of life is what you have to learn to let go of, what you have to learn to be detached from, what you have to learn to distance yourself from. That plays as much of a factor in one's level of happiness as everything that they gain. But the world doesn't really shine any emphasis on that side. But the Bhagavad Gita does. The Bhagavad Gita says through the yoga of knowledge, you can develop a certain type of detachment. And that detachment can allow you to let go of things that are not serving you or serving your purpose. Can you give me an idea of some of the things you feel we have to learn to let go of? What do we have to learn to let go of? Yes? Material desires. Very good. What else? Patterns of thought, narratives in our mind, set ways of thinking don't serve us. Yes. Control over others. We're forever trying to control others and then get frustrated because it's not within our circle of influence. Yes. Money. Yes. I'll help you out. Give it to me. Yes. Bad habits, bad lifestyles. Yes. The desire for prestige, the desire to be known. They say in the first 20 years of your life, you're very concerned what people think about you. In the second 20 years of your life, you don't care what people think about you anymore. And then later on, you realize nobody was thinking about you anyway. But we get so worked up about our image, our fame, our, So whether it's people, whether it's relationships, whether it's objects, whether it's narratives in our mind, how do we get the strength to let go of all of these things which are imprisoning us and limiting us in our life? An ancient Vedic teaching tells us we are the prison maker, we're the prisoner, and we're also the prison keeper. Isn't that amazing? We make the prison, and then we decide to imprison ourselves within that prison. But the good news is that we also have the key to get ourselves out of that prison as well. But that means we have to learn the art of how to let go. And that art can only be learned through transcendental knowledge. And so in the last 6 chapters of the Gita, Krishna begins to explain what is the nature of this world, how are we bound in this world, what are the energies, the mentalities which are limiting us in this world, and how this world is ultimately a reflection of another world. And then Krishna says, Jnana Ashina, with the sword of knowledge, cut the attachments that are binding you to this world and live in freedom. So, this is the Bhagavad Gita. So now we go back to the apatheists who say like, I don't know, it's not relevant, it doesn't help me, it doesn't do anything, I'm just going to get on with life. But my dear friend, what are you looking for? Success? Yes, that's why the first 6 chapters are there. Learn the art of karma yoga. Love? Yes, that's why the second 6 chapters are there. Learn the art of bhakti yoga. And I'm looking for freedom. Everyone's looking for freedom. They want to express themselves. They want equal rights. They want opportunity. They want technology so that there's no limitation. We're all looking for freedom. But freedom doesn't come by increasing the external opportunities. Freedom comes by freeing the mind from all the internal attachments that are preventing us from actually using our own volition and free will. And so if someone says, I want freedom, by all means, Jnana Yoga, the knowledge of how to detach yourself. So sometimes I tell people the Bhagavad Gita is a mirror. This is a mirror. You look in it and you're like, oh, that's what's going on. But this is also a model, because it's not just a mirror that tells you where you are, but it's a model which tells you where you can be. But it's not just that. The Bhagavad Gita is a map. It's a map which tells you how to get from where you are to where you want to be. But it's not just that. It's also a medicine that gives you the strength, the inspiration, the hope, the wisdom, the empowerment to be able to walk that path. And so we continue to engage and read and absorb and actually worship these books by our intelligence. Krishna says in the end of the Bhagavad Gita that one who studies this knowledge worships by intelligence. So that is very, very powerful, because remember, there's a whole other invisible world out there. There's an invisible world of unlimited opportunity. And the only thing that's blocking us from that is our own state of consciousness. And the knowledge, the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita is the key to unlocking that. Because here Krishna says, Jnanam teham savijnanam. I'm giving you knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. Knowing this, nothing further shall remain for you to know. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Thank you. 6-7 minutes, okay. Shall we, is there questions or no questions? Questions, answers? Okay. If anyone has a question they want to ask, comment, happy to. No questions? Okay.
So thank you, Maharaj, for the beautiful class. I was wondering, because the premise of the apatheist is what's predominantly there, people who don't find this relevant, that you're connecting to the basic human desires of love, freedom, etc. What if they completely reject that premise of, I don't buy into that anyway? How would you follow up with convincing them that this is truly relevant in your life, even if they don't buy into the initial argument?
Yeah, I think the way we do it is we ask people, then what is the meaning of your life? What are you looking for? If someone says, I'm not looking for success, I'm not looking for love, I'm not looking for freedom, can you tell me what you do from morning to evening? Just tell me what you do. And then when you begin dissecting that, then it becomes very, very obvious that everyone is looking for the same thing. See, it's not that there are religious people, there are non-religious people, there are spiritual people, there are non-spiritual people. The human spirit searches for the very same thing. Even George Harrison writes that everyone is looking for Krishna. Some know it, some don't. So the expert communicator of wisdom is able to, without impressing upon people or coercing them, to actually reveal to them through their own life and through what their own narrative of how they live their existence shows, that actually they are looking for these things. Because if you don't live for those things, what do you live for? What do you live for? So the first thing would be to establish that, yes, you are looking for this. The second thing would be to establish that you ain't doing very well in your attempt to get these things. That's usually the harder one. Because people have learned to settle for less. They kind of just accept that love does get frustrated in the world and it's just part of life. They've just kind of grown to accept that there are limitations and there's nothing I can do about it. So the whole Bhagavad Gita is actually meant to help people to dream more. Because the real problem is not that people are not searching for these things, but that they've accepted a very, very compromised version and they're happy with a drop in the ocean. But there's much more. And so another way to explain what the Bhagavad Gita is to the world, the Bhagavad Gita is a book which helps people to dream again, to dream beyond the limitation of what they know. And in that sense, it's a very, very empowering book because it introduces you to a world of unlimited possibility. Is that okay? Thank you. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the class. The way you described about the Bhagavad Gita was very profoundly simple and beautiful, but at least for me, when I try to pick it up and read it and go through it systematically, I get lost in the weeds almost, and it's not so simple anymore. Do you have any advice for how to get past that and keep it simple?
Spiritual learning is like a spiral. You have to go around and you see, like, material learning is like this. It's linear. You're just increasing in information, you're increasing in knowledge. But spiritual learning is like a spiral. You go round and round and round and again and the same book, and I'm going through it a fourth time and a seventh time and 10th time, and boom. At a certain point, I have a theory that you only read a book when you read it for the third time. So I remember when I first read the Bhagavad Gita, it was a profound experience because, number one, I didn't understand anything. But at the same time, I was like, this is amazing. It was the first time I read a book, I understood absolutely nothing, and I was like, that was amazing. And what occurred to me when I was 15 and I picked it up and I had that experience was that it's going to take time. Another thing is this. The Bhagavad Gita can be understood by someone who has the hunger to know. It's not so much about the knowledge that you receive, but it's the hunger within you that then does something with that knowledge which touches you and energizes you and nourishes you in a different way. Most people have stopped questioning. Most people have stopped challenging the world. Most people are kind of comfortable with how everything's going. And when you approach the Bhagavad Gita without that desperation, without that hunger, without that real desire to know, then the knowledge doesn't go very deep. Arjuna finished it off in 45 minutes. But that's because his desperation was at an incredible level. So our ability to grasp the knowledge of the Gita will be in direct proportion to the level of intensity to understand. And so that's another aspect. And then the other thing is just learn it with others. If you learn with others, you question, you clarify, you challenge, then it all goes a little deeper. So I guess there are three perspectives there. Read it more, look at approach it with more desperation and to really know, and then study it with others. Yes?
Maharaj, thank you for the wonderful class. Prabhupada writes in the, I think chapter 6, last verse, that actually there is only one yoga,
There's only one yoga.
and when the particular aspect of karma becomes stronger, I'm not able to remember the word Latin, but he's kind of trying to connect that the process is one. It just appears threefold. If I'm trying to summarize it.
So is it that there's ultimately just one yoga which appears threefold? Are they separate systems, or are they... Yeah, in one sense, as I mentioned, yoga means to connect with divinity. And so every aspect of karma yoga, bhakti, gyan, ashtanga, whatever it may be, they're all giving different ingredients which help one in the ultimate and universal endeavor, which is to connect with divinity. And so in different ways, yeah, it depends what way you look at it. In one way you can say it's one yoga, which is just different ingredients which are given in different systems. Another way you can see it is that these are different approaches and that they contribute and lead and sequentially evolve towards bhakti, which is the ultimate aspiration. So I think both perspectives are acceptable. And Srila Prabhupada will later on explain in the Gita as well that the yoga paths are also not discrete. Like you can't do pure anything, because there are always elements of the other yogas involved in it as well. Therefore we have, like, for example, karma mishra bhakti, or yoga mishra bhakti, or to even achieve perfection in jnana yoga, you need an element of bhakti, otherwise it won't work. So in that sense they are intertwined as well. Okay, so say something about the Bhagavatam? Yes, can I? So we also wanted to share something. I was mentioning about how the Bhagavad Gita is an incredible book. It's the mirror, the model, the map, the medicine. And here in my hand I have a Srimad Bhagavatam, which is, many of you are aware, almost we can say like a sequel to the Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes we say the Bhagavad Gita is the words of God, but the Srimad Bhagavatam is the activities, the world, the character, the personality of God. And so this beautiful Srimad Bhagavatam was translated by Srila Prabhupada. It was perhaps his most important project. He did it from the very first day of his teaching in the world to the very final moments of his time in this world. He did it every single morning, and wherever he went, he always included distributing and connecting people with this treasure house of knowledge as an integral part of his mission to kind of spread love in the world. And so the Srimad Bhagavatam is kind of like an anthology of love. It gives you all the accounts of how the greatest personalities in the universe connected to Krishna in relationships of love. It tells you about their journeys, about their struggles, about their victories, about the knowledge that they gained on their journey of love. And it's a book in which we also learn about God and how He expresses His love in His most intimate exchanges with His devotees. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is 18 volumes long. And we give everyone an opportunity to take a set of Srimad Bhagavatam if you don't have it at home. They're very, very beautiful books. It's just said that just by being in your home, there's a very, very special power, potency, a very special presence that is invoked. In an ancient verse it said, Krishna Tulya Bhagavata Vibhu Sarva Shrai, that this Bhagavata is non-different from Krishna, it's non-different from divinity. And therefore it's unlimited. Therefore the next verse says, Prati Shloke Prati Akshare Nana Arthakai. Because this book is unlimited, every syllable rains pure love of God, and in every syllable there is unlimited meaning, unlimited depth. And so I think we have some sets here, is it? We do have sets. I guess they'll be outside in the foyer. So if anyone is interested, I don't know, how much is it? These are $250 and they're 18 books. And I know you're thinking like, I'm never going to read 18 books in my life. But if you keep them in your home, even if you just go in and out of them, you might find that you start getting addicted, and it starts to capture your heart in very beautiful ways. So there was an ancient teacher who had a manuscript of Srimad Bhagavatam, and when someone came to learn from him, then he opened the Bhagavatam and it was all blotched, because when his teacher would read, then he would shed tears, and those tears blurred all the pages. So the Srimad Bhagavatam really touches our hearts and really is our constant companion through a world in which we're trying to make sense of things. So please, if you don't have a copy of Srimad Bhagavatam, then please take advantage. All right. Do we finish here, or? Yes, okay. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki.